They walked in like any ordinary couple, dressed simply, with nothing flashy about them. No designer clothes, no luxury accessories, just two people holding hands, looking for something special in a jewelry store filled with glittering diamonds and polished gold. To the staff, they seemed out of place. The way the salespeople glanced at them, whispered, and finally turned them away made it clear they didn't think this couple belonged there. With a cold smile and dismissive tone, the store manager asked them to leave, assuming they could never afford even the smallest ring in the display. The couple quietly walked out, but not before their eyes met, sharing an understanding that no one else could see. What the staff didn't know was that behind their modest appearance was a story that would shock everyone in the room. The couple wasn't just browsing. They were planning to make a purchase that would change how everyone saw them. Moments later, when their true wealth was revealed, the same people who pushed them away would be left speechless. The judgments made in seconds would crumble under the weight of reality, proving that appearances can be more deceiving than the brightest diamond in the store. This isn't just a story about jewelry. It's about respect, kindness, and how quick assumptions can lead to regret. The way this couple was treated inside that glittering showroom will make you question how often people are judged for what they wear or how they look. But the twist that follows will leave you stunned. Because when this simple couple shows who they really are, the room falls silent, and every single person learns a lesson they will never forget. What happens next will completely turn the story upside down. The couple's name was Daniel and Sarah. They lived a quiet life, far away from the rush of the city. To anyone who saw them, they looked like the kind of people who worked hard, saved every penny, and lived simply without needing much. And in many ways, that was true. They didn't care about showing off or trying to impress anyone. What most people didn't know was that their simplicity wasn't because of lack, but because of choice. They had built their life around values, not appearances, and that made them very different from the crowd that usually filled high-end jewelry stores. Sarah had always dreamed of owning a piece of jewelry that carried meaning, not just sparkle. She wanted a ring that could symbolize their years of love, the sacrifices they made together, and the bond that kept them strong through difficult times. Daniel, quiet but thoughtful, had saved for months, not because they couldn't afford more, but because he wanted it to be perfect, chosen with care. To them, this wasn't about money. It was about a memory they would keep forever. But the sales staff didn't see any of that. To them, Daniel's worn jacket and Sarah's simple dress told the whole story. They whispered among themselves, rolling their eyes as the couple looked at the display cases with genuine admiration. The manager's voice carried a tone of superiority as he said the store was busy and that they should come back when ready to buy. The words stung, but Daniel and Sarah stayed calm. They exchanged a glance that said more than words ever could. Little did the staff know, this moment was only the beginning, because what Daniel was carrying in his pocket would soon reveal a truth that none of them were prepared for. As Daniel and Sarah stepped outside the glittering store, the city lights reflected in the glass behind them, making the jewelry inside seem even more unreachable. Sarah's smile was faint but steady, while Daniel's jaw tightened as if he was holding back words he didn't want to say. They were used to being underestimated, but there was something different about this moment. The way they had been dismissed so quickly, as though they didn't matter, cut deeper than either wanted to admit. Inside the store, the staff carried on, laughing quietly as if the incident was nothing more than a routine part of their day. To them, Daniel and Sarah were just another couple who couldn't afford the luxury lifestyle the store represented. But what they didn't realize was that outside those doors, decisions were already being made that would change everything. Daniel still held the small envelope in his pocket, something that could instantly shift the balance of power in the room they had just left. Meanwhile, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about how different people's lives would be if kindness was given freely, no matter who stood in front of you. Her mind wandered back to their journey, to the nights when they worked side by side building something from nothing, to the sacrifices that most people would never see. That ring she wanted wasn't just an accessory. It was a symbol of all those years of loyalty, trust, and shared dreams. Unbeknownst to the couple, another subplot was unfolding. A young employee in the store, who had watched the entire scene in silence, felt uneasy about what had happened. She had recognized Daniel from a business article she had stumbled upon weeks earlier, but didn't dare speak up. Now, her silence weighed heavy on her as she wondered what would happen if the truth came out. Tension was quietly spreading, waiting for the moment it would break. Daniel and Sarah stood just a few steps away from the store, the cool air brushing against them as the glow of the jewelry display shimmered in the background. Daniel's hand rested on the envelope in his pocket, his mind racing with whether he should turn back. Sarah looked at him quietly, her eyes asking the same unspoken question. Was it worth showing them who they really were? The sting of disrespect was still fresh, and the thought of walking away without saying anything felt heavier with each passing second. Inside, the store grew louder. A wealthy-looking couple had just entered, and the staff rushed to greet them with wide smiles and eager hands. Every piece of jewelry was suddenly displayed with care and attention, the exact treatment Daniel and Sarah had been denied minutes earlier. The contrast was sharp, and the unfairness only deepened the silence between them outside. Daniel's grip on the envelope tightened. At the far corner of the room, the young employee who had recognized him earlier kept her eyes on the door. Her heart pounded as she replayed the moment in her mind. She knew Daniel wasn't just another customer. He was the same man she had read about, the one whose quiet success story had been shared online. She remembered the article clearly. A man who had built a thriving business from nothing, who was respected for staying humble despite his wealth. But how could she speak now, surrounded by colleagues who had just mocked him? As Daniel finally stepped forward, pushing open the glass door again, the energy in the store shifted. Sarah followed close behind, her presence calm but firm. The laughter and chatter slowly quieted, and all eyes began to turn their way. The envelope was still in Daniel's hand, unopened, its weight growing heavier with every heartbeat. The moment before everything changed had arrived. As Daniel and Sarah stepped back into the store, the silence was thick enough to cut. Every sparkle from the glass cases seemed to mock the quiet tension in the air. Daniel placed the envelope on the counter, his steady eyes meeting the manager's smug expression. The staff shifted uncomfortably, unsure if this was a joke or an act of defiance. Just when it felt like the room couldn't grow more uneasy, the unexpected happened. The wealthy couple who had just been welcomed so warmly suddenly paused, their attention drawn not to the diamonds, but to Daniel himself. The man leaned closer, whispering something urgently to his wife before both of them turned wide-eyed. They recognized him. It wasn't just the young employee who knew. This man had once been in a high-profile business deal that made headlines, though his simple clothes now hid that truth well. Their recognition spread like a spark, and whispers began to ripple through the room. The manager, still oblivious, forced a laugh. "Sir, unless you're ready to purchase, we really need to attend to our valued customers." But his voice wavered now, betraying the crack in his confidence. Sarah's calm expression didn't change, but Daniel's silence felt louder than words. Then came the second twist. The envelope wasn't the only thing Daniel had brought. From his coat, he pulled a small black case, worn on the outside but secured with a golden clasp. The case drew everyone's eyes instantly. The staff leaned closer. The wealthy couple froze, and even the young employee's breath caught in her throat. The envelope alone had seemed heavy, but this case hinted at something far greater. No one knew what it contained, but the way Daniel set it down on the glass counter made it clear. The story was about to change in ways none of them could imagine. The stakes had risen, and the entire room now waited in silence for what would happen next. The room went still as Daniel slowly opened the black case. Inside lay a dazzling necklace, handcrafted and rare, its stones catching the light in a way that made even the store's displays pale in comparison. Gasps filled the air. It wasn't something ordinary. It was a custom piece, designed years ago by one of the most renowned jewelers in the world. Collectors whispered that only a handful existed, and yet here it was, resting in the hands of the man they had just turned away. The manager's face drained of color. His arrogant smile was gone, replaced by a nervous flicker of disbelief. "Where did you get this?" he stammered, his tone no longer commanding but desperate. Daniel's reply was calm and measured. "We commissioned it, and we came today to add another piece to our collection." Sarah's gentle hand rested on his arm, her presence grounding the storm of tension around them. The wealthy couple who had recognized Daniel now stepped forward, nodding respectfully. "This man doesn't just buy jewelry," the husband said, his voice steady. "He invests in it. He's one of the most influential collectors in the region." The entire staff froze, their earlier dismissive laughter now replaced by regret and unease. The young employee who had kept quiet lowered her head, guilt written across her face. Just when it seemed the lesson was complete, Daniel surprised everyone once more. He closed the case, slipped the envelope back into his pocket, and turned toward the door. "We don't need to buy anything here," he said simply. "We only came to see how we'd be treated." The silence that followed was heavier than any words, and as he and Sarah walked out hand in hand, leaving behind stunned faces, the final twist was clear. True wealth wasn't just in what they carried, but in the dignity with which they carried themselves. As Daniel and Sarah stepped back into the evening air, the lights of the jewelry store faded behind them. Their footsteps were calm, steady, and unhurried, a sharp contrast to the chaos they had just left inside. Sarah squeezed his hand gently, a smile forming as if to say they didn't need glittering showcases or eager salespeople to validate who they were. They had walked in as themselves, and they left as themselves. Only now, everyone inside that store would never forget them. Inside, the staff stood frozen, each one replaying the moment over and over. The manager's pride had crumbled. The wealthy couple had seen humility outshine wealth, and the young employee finally understood why silence sometimes costs more than words. The lesson wasn't just about money. It was about respect, kindness, and never judging someone by appearances. For Daniel and Sarah, the night became one more story in their quiet journey together. They didn't need to prove their worth to strangers, but the experience reminded them of something deeper. That true value lies in character, not what you wear or how you look. The necklace, the case, even the envelope, those were symbols of success, yes, but they weren't what defined them. What defined them was walking away with grace. As they disappeared into the crowd, their story lingered like an echo, a reminder to everyone who heard it that wealth doesn't always shine on the surface. Sometimes it hides in simplicity, in patience, and in love strong enough to withstand judgment. And that is why the couple who seemed so ordinary when they first walked into the store ended up teaching everyone an extraordinary lesson. Never underestimate the quiet, because it often carries the loudest truth.